Good evening, Mr. Bond fans, and welcome to another video where we're going to be looking back at an older video. This one, a review of The Man with the Golden Gun. One of the things I'm going to be most interested about going back to this one is what mood I was in regarding The Man with the Golden Gun when I made this video, because The Man with the Golden Gun is in the same camp as Diamonds Are Forever and A View to a Kill for me. These are Bond films that, if I'm in just the right mood, I can just roll with and have a really good time with. But then equally, there are times that I come out of them thinking, oh, that was kind of boring and crap, wasn't it? Believe it or not, there was a time where I would have cited The Man with the Golden Gun as one of, if not my favorite Bond film ever, and I don't know why. I remember when I was about 10, 11 years old, something like that. I did this huge, I got a huge, like, A3 bit of paper, and I, like, put columns, and all of the different categories that you associate with Bond films, so the Bond actor, the Bond girls, the villain, the cars, the action, gadgets, all that kind of thing. And I gave each film a score out of 10 for each of these categories, and for some reason, The Man with the Golden Gun came out on top, so I decided that it was my favourite Bond film. And I don't quite know how that happened, because I don't even think that The Man with the Golden Gun has particularly good, like, gadgets or action sequences or anything like that, but I guess the high scores for Bond girl and villain and henchman and all that kind of stuff must have just carried it, because I do remember when I was a kid thinking that Britt Ekland in this film was one of the most just beautiful images ever captured on film, so yeah, I guess that counted for a lot. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, I've seen here, I remember recording this, and I was very proud of you can just see it in the background there, it's the exact same Golden Gun. It was one of the very first, like, higher-end Bond prop replica memorabilia things that I ever owned, so I was very proud of it. And I remember I was in my student house when I filmed this, and we'd pull pranks on each other and stuff, you know, going to each other's rooms and, like, move things around or whatever. And the Golden Gun, I kept that at my mum's house because I did not want that to become a pawn in any, like, student house pranks, and I had to bring it over to the student house to film this little bit. And I remember treating it like you know, I was smuggling, you know, highly valuable gold or something into the house and keeping it a secret from my flatmates because I just didn't want them to know that I had this there, but I was determined that I had to have it for this video review. And this, if I remember rightly, there's no joke to this either. It is just me showing off, like, look what I've got. But anyway, let's dive right in. Oh, hello, and welcome again to another edition of my Weekly Bond. As you've probably guessed, this week we will be looking at The Man with the Golden Gun. So, load up your golden pistols and let the film commence.
The film opens on an island in Thailand where we see our main villain, Francisco Scaramanga, played by Christopher Lee, on a beach with his midget henchman, Nick Nack, played by Hervé Villechaize, and his gorgeous mistress, Andrea Anders, played by Maud Adams. We see Christopher Lee sporting a third nipple and some bizarre chest hair.
Couldn't they at least have shaved all of the hair off Christopher Lee's chest?
We see Nick Nack welcoming a familiar face, played by Mark Lawrence, onto the island.
I didn't know there was a pool down there.
It turns out Nick Nack has hired the gangster to kill Scaramanga, and we have an exciting opening sequence involving the two stalking one another in Scaramanga's fun house, which includes a Wild West setting.
And that's Roger Moore there as the gunslinger.
And a Chicago setting.
Wow, what a lifelike Al Capone figure. It even flinches.
I'll say here that I love the fact they got Mark Lawrence to play the assassin. Whether he's meant to be the same character as in Diamonds Are Forever is debatable, as it's never really stated, but I really like to think he is, as it lends the series a nice bit of continuity. Anyway, Scaramanga kills the assassin, and we see a lifelike mannequin of James Bond, which Scaramanga shoots the fingers off. We then get the title sequence and title song sung by Lulu, which honestly isn't as bad as most Bond fans would have you believe. I've heard a lot of people complain about this song and cite the lyrics as one of the main reasons why it's so crap. But seriously, have you ever listened to the lyrics of any other Bond song? The film then switches to London, where we see Bond in M's office along with Bill Tainer and some guy who I recognise from the Hotel Inspectors episode of Fawlty Towers. This is notably the first appearance of the character Bill Tainer, who appears in later installments of the series, but why the heck he's included here is anyone's guess, as he really doesn't do anything. Anyway, Bond has been called in because MI6 has received a golden bullet with 007 etched into it, and assuming Scaramanga is targeting Bond, M forces Bond to go on leave from his mission, which revolves around some energy crisis scientist. But Bond naturally sets out to find Scaramanga himself. After following up several leads, he traces the bullet back to Scaramanga's mistress, Andrea, and pursues her.
Follow that road. Madam, would you be good enough to move this inverted bedpan?
I'm sorry I'm late, James.
Ah, Britt Eklund. Yes, this is where we're introduced to this film's Bond girl in the form of Mary Goodnight, an MI6 agent who is there to assist Bond in his mission.
A green rose?
A green Rolls Royce. There can't be that many in Hong Kong.
It really wasn't that funny. It's weird that Bond seems so agitated by Goodnight and even goes as far to reject her flirtations. Which is unusual. She's Britt Eklund, she's gorgeous. Connery would have had her in bed 3 times by now. Bond gets into Andrea's hotel room and threatens her into telling him where Scaramanga is. It turns out Andrea's a trapped woman and was the one who sent the golden bullet to MI6 in the hopes that Bond would come and rescue her. He beats the information out of her, which makes the entire scene quite uncomfortable. Moore can't pull off hitting the girl in the same way that Connery could. Director Guy Hamilton defends this by saying something along the lines of, Bond is a cold and ruthless killer, so of course he'd hit a girl in order to get information out of her. However, Roger Moore just doesn't do the cold and ruthless thing very well and just comes off as being a bit of a prat. Moore has to seduce the girl to get information, not slap her about. Couple this with the fact that Andrea is really a very sympathetic character, and Maud Adams plays her with a kind of seriousness that we're not really used to in a Bond film, I guess. It all just makes the whole sequence very uncomfortable to watch.
You know, I probably that was quite a tangent really there, but I'm surprised that even that long ago I felt that way about Andrea Anders, because it is still one of, the biggest sort of stumbling blocks for me with The Man with the Golden Gun is that her subplot feels so serious and sad, and I don't feel like it gels that well with the more happy-go-lucky comedic, quite frankly, elements that make up the rest of the film. I didn't realize I had those opinions that early on, but anyway.
Andrea tells Bond to go to the Bottoms Up Club where Scaramanga's next hit is. It turns out the hit was a man called Gibson, who was involved in Bond's previous mission and was carrying a MacGuffin, a Solex agitator, a device needed for operating a solar energy plant, which Knick-Knack manages to steal. Bond is taken by a man named Lieutenant Hip to the MI6 headquarters to meet MQ and... who?
It won't take me long to check out Gibson's efficiency claim. Now, this is really exciting. Now, may I see it, Lieutenant?
I still don't know that guy's name. I was just thinking then, what is his name?
Yes, hello, man with mustache, who we have no idea who you actually are.
I
Still
almost
don't.
wish that Scaramanga had a contract on you.
Ooh, M1 Bond 0. Anyway, Bond's mission is now to retrieve the MacGuffin, Solex agitator. He poses as Scaramanga and gets invited to the estate of Mr. High Fat, who was apparently the one to hire Scaramanga to kill Gibson. Bond is driven there by Lieutenant Hip and his 2 nieces. However, Bond is rumbled and taken to High Fat's dojo, where Bond is to be killed by one of the students. If one of those martial arts guys dies every time 2 of them fight, I'm amazed they have any pupils left at that school. Of course, Bond escapes and fights off the students of the school with the help of a Deus Ex Machina, Lieutenant Hip and his nieces, who then make their escape.
Oh, I have a feeling I'm gonna have a sidebar about why the hell does Lieutenant Hip drive away like that.
What? Who? What? I'm sorry, why does he just drive off? So, yeah, Hip drives off without Bond for some reason. I don't know, maybe the screenwriters just couldn't be asked. Anyway, Bond makes his getaway along the Bangkok canals,
I think that
but
might
runs
just be
into some
it.
boat trouble.
I'll tell you what, Sonny, I'll give you 20,000 baht if you can make this heap go any faster.
20,000 baht!
I'm afraid I have to owe you.
That's UNICEF Ambassador Roger Moore right there, pushing the kid into the canal.
Yay.
Oh, Sheriff Pepper's back. How wonderful.
Oh, I'm surprised at that. Was I not admitting my love for the character back then? Was I still trying to behave like I was above it?
If you got your little pointy heads out of them pajamas, you wouldn't be late for work.
And the merry racism continues.
Boy, you is ugly.
JW? Where are you?
Wow, if that's the kind of hilarity we get after only 2 minutes of Mr. and Mrs. Pepper in Thailand, I'm amazed they didn't just do a spin-off film. Mr. and Mrs. Pepper's Adventures in the Orient. I'd pay to see it. Bond gets back to his hotel and has dinner with Goodnight, who, going against her previous flirtations, actually turns Bond down. See, I have respect for Goodnight there. Bond was a twat to her earlier, and now he just wants a bit of the old fornication. He clearly sees her as nothing more than an object for sex, so she turns him down. Good for you, Goodnight. I have respect for you for that. You... you stupid, fickle woman. Interesting to know that it's taken Bond over an hour to bed his first woman of the film. To be honest, I'm amazed he hasn't exploded by this point. Andrea then pops up and asks Bond to kill Scaramanga. Andrea is such a tragic character, I can't help but really dislike Bond in this film for the way he treats her. He smacks her around to get information out of her, yet she's trapped in this horrible relationship with an evil man and she asks for Bond's help by prostituting herself. She's clearly a sad and lonely individual, yet he still bangs her. Goodnight, however, is not quite so tragic. Though it is rather dickish of Bond to throw her into a closet while he bangs Andrea. Andrea agrees to steal the Solex for Bond if he agrees to kill Scaramanga, and they meet at a boxing venue where Bond discovers Andrea has been shot and killed by Scaramanga. Seeing Andrea dead is genuinely quite chilling. Scaramanga sits next to Bond and begins to tell him a story from his childhood, while Bond notices the Solex on the floor by Andrea's feet. Leah's particularly great in this scene, and the story he tells is genuinely quite intriguing and interesting, so it's a shame we keep cutting away to Bond and the Solex, as it seriously undermines a scene that could otherwise be quite chilling and threatening. Anyway, Bond passes the Solex to Hip, who passes it to Goodnight, who gets locked in the boot of Scaramanga's car. Cue car chase sequence.
How about demonstration, boy?
Certainly, sir.
Of course, a sheriff from Louisiana is looking to buy a car in Thailand. Very plausible. The car chase is much like the boat chase from Live and Let Die in that it's a lot of great stunt work intercut with the various bits of comedy from Sheriff Pepper. Here are a few of my highlights.
Yay, a supercut.
I know you.
Oh, no.
Oh, I cut the English secret agent bit. I like that bit. Oh, I'm doing stunts. All right, okay. I thought I was going to be doing my favorite Sheriff Pepper moments.
All right, good night. Don't panic.
Who's that?
It's headquarters.
It's headquarters.
Let me talk to him. Hello, this is Sheriff J.W. Pepper, Louisiana State Police.
See, Sheriff Pepper is one of my highlights of the Man with the Golden Gun these days. I think he's so ridiculously funny. I love that scene where he's talking to Goodnight.
Right.
Which car are we all chasing, boy?
Oh, and the stunts. Oh, am I going to complain about the slide whistle? I think I
Bridge
might.
stunt is really quite cool. One of the best stunts in the series, in fact.
But
It's just a shame they ruin it with that stupid sound effect.
Yep.
Anyway, Scaramanga flies away with Goodnight by sticking wings on his car, and Sheriff Pepper manages to get him one last bit of casual racism before he departs from the Bond series forever.
What's the matter? Ain't none of you pointy heads ever seen an airplane before?
But he did come back in 007 Racing.
Correctly. Scaramanga got away.
Yes, sir.
The car that sprouted wings. Oh, that's perfectly feasible, sir. As a matter of fact, we're working on one now. Oh, Q, shut up.
God, M's really pissed off in this film, isn't he?
He is.
Luckily for MI6, Goodnight was carrying a tracking device which could be used to track her down to Scaramanga's island. Bond flies there alone as to avoid Chinese radar and arrives on the island where Scaramanga reveals to Bond his dastardly plan to present the now deceased high-fat solar power technology to the world and sell it on to the highest bidder, thus creating a monopoly on solar energy, therefore forcing the oil sheiks to pay Scaramanga millions to keep the technology off the market. Bond is shown how the Solex fits into this when Scaramanga uses it to power a solar gun which he uses to destroy Bond's plane. Bond is reunited with Goodnight over dinner where Scaramanga challenges Bond to a pistol duel. The duel itself is full of tense moments and is very well put together, but of course Bond wins by posing as his mannequin.
We covered a lot of ground very quickly there.
Meanwhile, Goodnight kills a technician who falls into a pool of something, sending everything into meltdown. Bond retrieves the Solex as the island is exploding, and him and Goodnight jump on Scaramanga's Chinese junk. And, of course, once again, the villain's henchman returns to have one last pop at Bond. Knick-Knack is subdued, but not killed, and Roger Moore comes out with this bizarre line.
But darling, who's at the wheel?
George,
George?
automatic pilot.
George? What? Is that just a joke I'm not getting? The film ends.
Someone did explain that joke to me because I think I complained about it in another video and I can't quite remember where it comes from, but there is a reason why the autopilot is called George, and it's not to do with it's not a thinly veiled sort of dig at George Lazenby being an autopilot Bond. I'm fairly sure it's not that. Anyway.
With Goodnight and Bond getting it on and Knick-Knack looking upset in a wicker cage.
A wicker cage? I don't know if that was a deliberate reference to the Wicker Man, with Britt Eklund, obviously, but I suspect that that's where my thought process was at with that particular line.
So that's The Man with the Golden Gun, and it's a really mixed bag of quality and style. Roger Moore puts in another good performance, but something isn't quite right here. It's like Moore established his own personal style in Live and Let Die, but was then told to act more like Connery in this film, hence the beating of Andrea and the general sliminess displayed when trying to bed Goodnight. Moore just can't pull this off the way Connery did. Christopher Lee puts in a brilliant performance as Scaramanga, and Scaramanga is easily one of the best Bond villains ever.
Yep,
Lee is so good, in fact, that you almost end up rooting for him throughout the film. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the sympathetic story Scaramanga tells of his childhood. Maybe it's just the fact that Christopher Lee is just awesome in general. Or maybe it's the fact that Bond is such a dick in this film. I'm just looking out for someone else to root for. Britt Eklund is great as Mary Goodnight, and while the part is certainly one of the least challenging Bond girl roles, she is suitably beautiful and funny and looks fucking gorgeous in a bikini. Hervé Villachet is also wonderful as Knick-Knack, one of the most memorable Bond villains of all time. I've already talked about Maud Adams and her character Andrea previously in this review, so all I'll add here is that Adams is a brilliant actress, and did I mention I think Bond's a dick for the way he treats her in this film? The return of Clifton James as Sheriff Pepper is somewhat misguided in the larger context of the series, yet I can't help but really enjoy Clifton James' performance, and he's just as funny as he is in Live and Let Die. Other positives about the film for me include the John Barry score, which I think is easily one of the finest, and the wonderful set designs on Scaramanga's Island, especially the funhouse. I don't know what it is about The Man with the Golden Gun. It used to be my favourite Bond film as a kid. Then when I was a teenager it became one of my least favourites, and now I'd rank it somewhere around the middle, so I guess if you ask me about it again in 5 years I'll probably have a whole different opinion. My opinions of it now, at least, would be that it suffers from feeling quite tired and churned out. There are some interesting ideas presented, Scaramanga being Bond's equal and Andrea trapped in her situation, for example, but it feels like these ideas would have been better explored in a more serious Bond film, and it's not often you'll find me wishing for a more serious Bond film. But tonally, The Man with the Golden Gun just doesn't hit the nail on the head like Live and Let Die. And dare I say, in parts, it's actually a little boring. However, you can't deny that the film has an excellent Bond girl in Britt Eklund and a pair of iconic villains in Christopher Lee and Hervé Villachet. So yeah, it's not amazing, but it's not terrible. However, the film was the last Bond film to be joint produced by Harry Saltzman and Cubby Broccoli, with Harry Saltzman running into financial troubles and having to sell off his side of the partnership, making Cubby Broccoli the sole producer of the James Bond films, and almost as if to prove he could do it solo, it feels like they went all out for what is quite possibly my favourite Bond film of the series, The Spy Who Loved Me.
Well, that was a lot more middle of the road, actually, than I thought it would be. That evaluation there at the end was sort of a strange parallel to comments that I'd made in my intro for this video, which I wasn't quite expecting. Maybe my opinion of The Man with the Golden Gun hasn't flip-flopped over the years as much as it has. I think I would... There's so many Bond films that I love more than it, so it's not middle ranking for me at the moment anymore. I think lower middle, maybe the middle of the lower half, but yeah, interesting. Okay, there were a lot more comments in that I resonated with now than I thought I would. If I'd have had to put money on what reaction I thought I would have had here, I would have put money on being a bit more on the more positive side. I'm glad that I did give Sheriff Pepper a little bit of a shout out there at the end, because, yeah, this was at a time where I think I was trying to be like, oh no, I'm trying to be very serious about this, and I won't admit that I actually, you know, find that character just buffoonish and hilarious. So yeah, I was glad that I got that in at the end there. But yeah, everything about, you know, loving Christopher Lee, everything involving Maud Adams' character, I still very much, you know, a lot of those comments I would still agree with now, to be perfectly honest, and about Moore's performance as well. It's probably my least favorite James Bond performance that he gave, largely because of the direction and what the script had him do, trying to make him a bit more harder edged, which I just don't think he could do that well in this context. I think he can play harder edge Bond really well in certain moments in some of his other films. For Your Eyes Only obviously springs to mind, but then there's great harder edged moments in like Octopussy and The Spy Who Loved Me as well. So yeah, that was an interesting one, and as ever I just kind of want to go and rewatch the film again right away just to see, like, do I still think that way? Please do let me know your thoughts on this older review and of The Man with the Golden Gun itself in the comments section below. Also below are links to my various social media pages, and there is of course the subscribe button and the Mrs. Bell notification button, so please do click both of those if you want to stay super up to date on future video uploads. And with all that being said, and until next time, Bond fans, so long for now.